What's up, Region 4? This is Jeremy Chance with your Region 4 Communications Committee, bringing to you the newest episode in our conversation this series celebrating Black History Month. Black History Month is the annual celebration of achievements by Black and African Americans and a time for recognizing their central role in our U.S. history. And this month is dedicated to celebrating, highlighting Black excellence. Region 4 is no different as we set to highlight and celebrate our Black and African American colleagues in our region. So it is my pleasure to have with us today newly elected NIRSA President-elect, Dr. Wendy Windsor. Wendy, how are you?
I'm doing great, Jeremy. What about yourself?
Oh, I'm doing well. So we'll go ahead and just talk a little bit about, introduce yourself, where you are now, and maybe a little bit about your pathway, your NIRSA history. How did you get to where you are right now?
Sure, absolutely. And I'll give you the modified version, of course.
Sure.
But as Jeremy said, I'm Dr. Wendy Windsor, the current director at Tulane University in New Orleans, Louisiana. Been here for about 3.5 years, and a little bit of my background. So I actually started off in recreation about 16 years ago. I landed my first job in collegiate rec at Texas A&M University, Kingsville. So that was my first stint in Region 4. Was there for about 2 years, originally from the Southeast, and wanted to get back a little bit close to home. So landed a position at Middle Tennessee State University, better known as MTSU, was there for about 8 years. Did a lot in Region 2, started up basically the Southeastern Collegiate Soccer Alliance, which is club soccer for Region 2 while I was there, served on a lot of other NIRSA committees, and it really was where I think my journey in NIRSA actually started to begin, or actually began. Then went off to Louisiana State University, LSU, as the associate programs, was there for 4 years, not really looking to make a move when the job opportunity at UCLA came up. Definitely a big leap of faith, Southerner going out to the West Coast, but I saw it as a tremendous opportunity to go work for Mick DeLuca and continue to develop my professional skills. So was there for about 2 years. Once again, the theme is I miss home as a Southerner. Perfect opportunity open up in New Orleans, where I have a lot of family right now. So it was like that job that was a no-brainer. So decided to apply, and here I am. Like I said, been here for about 3.5 years now.
Feeling back at home, I'm sure.
Back at home.
Yeah. So, we'll talk about why we're here, and it's Black History Month. Talk to us a little about what Black History Month means to you and how you celebrate and honor the month. How do you celebrate your own identity as a Black woman, and why is that important to you?
Sure. I always like to think about Black history as just the celebration of Black excellence. I really think that that's the new terminology that you hear now, and for me, it's really about taking the time to reflect and give honor and recognition to those that basically came before me, those that paved the way for so many of us, especially women of color, Black women, to really kind of step up and become those leaders that we know that we can become, and to be able to identify who those role models are and who those mentors are has been key. In my celebration of myself and my accomplishments, and I think about how I like to celebrate. It is about just taking time to really truly think about those who were instrumental for me, my role models, my mentors. Think about what my accomplishments are, because we really don't take the time to really celebrate our own personal achievements enough. And I think especially as Black women, the road to success is hard. And so to be able to really say, hey, you know what, I made it, and I need to be proud and celebrate who I am is a key. And then during this month, I also like to make sure that I personally thank all of those women that have been so instrumental, so It's my one time where I pick up the phone call and I have some amazing conversations with those women that were pioneers for me. And it's like I said, it's really about just celebrating excellence, recognizing those that came before you, and then hopefully influencing those that will come behind you as well.
Yeah, you talked. I mean, you touched on it right there, and I know you were part of the Talks with Tiffany series. If those of you haven't seen it, those episodes are recorded. But talk a little bit about the importance of representation and maybe some of those icons that you or role models you've referenced there, and how they impacted you specifically, whether they're in NIRSA or otherwise. Maybe give a shout out to some of those folks.
Sure. Yeah. So I think within NIRSA, I think there's been one like clear role model for women of color. Well, actually two. I mean, you go back to Juliette Moore, who was definitely, she was the one that laid out the sweat and tears and really showed us that if you set your mind to it, like anything is possible, right? I mean, she really was our true pioneer. But then you had, for me personally, looking at Jocelyn, because with Jocelyn Hill, when you first come into the field, you do look for those individuals that, look like you, that you can identify with, and that you hope could really help groom and build yourself up as you look to move forward in the career. So I think, Juliette and Jocelyn definitely within NIRSA were two that I really kind of looked up to. My one, I guess, role model outside of NIRSA, many of you hopefully know Robin Roberts. She is now, commentator on CBS, but, I first really started to follow Robin's story when she was very active within ESPN. Robin and I, she's a Southerner, we come from some of the same roots, some of the same upbringing, and I really did see her and her success as the roadmap for myself, and morals and everything else that Robin stands for, is who I really idolized to become. And I said, you know what, if someone like her, from a small country town, in the South can really make it on the national level, then I have possibility as well. So, growing up, I had pictures of her, I was like, you know what, she's going to be my inspiration. And I still, to this day, really respect her as an individual and what she represents, not just for Black women, but just for females in general.
Yeah, earlier you talked about Black History Month really being that time for you personally to reflect on your role and influence, over your career. Maybe think back and share with us, talk about your experience working with people who look like you, students, fellow professionals, maybe people that have reported to you. If you've had the opportunity to work with people that look like you, talk a little bit about that experience over the course of your career.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, both. I've had the opportunity to work with people that look like me and supervise, of course, individuals, Black up and coming professionals as well. And I think, for me, it's always a unique experience because especially those that you supervise, you really want to provide as many professional development opportunities and mentor. It's a natural mentorship. You don't even think about it. It's just a natural mentorship. And, I actually had a hard lesson to learn because we, especially as Black women, we have a certain level of expectation for ourselves. And so therefore, when you see other Black males and women in our profession trying to, navigate, this system that we have to navigate, those same expectations that you have for yourself, sometimes you have not sometimes, all the time, you have for those individuals as well. And I had to learn, okay, you know what, you may need to lower your expectations because, my expectations are extremely high. And so what tend to happen is you really have how can I say it? It's the opportunity, you're too hard on them. That's the word. Sometimes I came across as too hard, right? And so I had to kind of take a step back and say, this is a mentoring this is a nurturing opportunity to really make sure that you take the time to learn their strengths and help them develop their strengths, and know that, you know what, they are going to make some mistakes along the way, right? But know that that's a part of the growing process. And that was really hard, because I want everyone to be successful, and knowing for myself how hard it is, when I see, that it's just one of those things that it's rewarding, because I know that, if you put in the time, it definitely pays off, and I know that was probably kind of a long-winded response, but it's a hard question, because, when you're mentoring young males, young Black males and young Black females, it's like I said, it's just a unique experience that's hard to really articulate on this call.
Sure. Well, again, you're our new NIRSA President-elect, so we're looking forward to what your influence in that position. But one of the things I noticed in your application response, the questions about what 3 priorities can you identify that NIRSA should accomplish over the time, you mentioned that BIPOC support, recognition, and advocacy efforts. Talk a little about what that means to you, or why that is such a priority for you, and what that might look like.
Sure. It's something that, like, it didn't just start, right now, right? It's something that I've always been passionate about. And, this opportunity this last year has really allowed for many of us to start putting some of those works in play. So, for example, you already mentioned the talks with Tiffany, and, myself and a few other individuals have really formed a very strong women network, the Black Women of NIRSA. And I think, with all the caucuses and everything else that has emerged within NIRSA, it's about really making sure that we continue those efforts and really strengthen those efforts and strengthening those bonds. And looking at, the Black Women of NIRSA in particular, what I think is the most valuable is the mentorship that's happening within that group, as well as the networking opportunities, and a lot of the educational components that we're bringing in as well, right? So I think the first thing that we need to do is make sure that there's opportunities for, the BIPOC community to continue to get together, to continue to hear one another, to continue to network. I think second is we have to figure out how to better position and better recognize those BIPOC members that either have done some excellent work within the association and within their own campuses as well. But B, how to make sure that they do have the resources and the opportunities to start to develop into those leadership roles. Because I think the one thing that, we may be missing a boat on right now is those individuals that don't have access to a lot of the resources that some of us do, right? You have a lot of institutions that can't afford the nursing membership. So we got to think about, like, how can we tap into those individuals? How can we make sure that they are a part of who we are as NIRSA, and really start to find ways of bringing those individuals to the forefront? And once we have them, just positioning, even those of us that are current members, how are we making sure that BIPOC members are represented in leadership roles? What are we doing to make sure that it's intentional, right? I mean, if you look at if you look at certain leadership roles, there's still an absence of people of color, right? And for an association that has its values driven into inclusivity and diversity, we got to make sure that when everyone looks at the association, they're seeing themselves represented, right? And so it's just about finding creative ways of making sure that happens.
Well, I think we're excited to see you help implement that. We'll kind of transition the conversation to more the action side of things. What advice or tangible things can you provide for young Black professionals who follow in your footsteps, who may view you as a mentor or a role model? What are some tangible things you can provide for them to be doing to be successful in our field?
What advice? Wow. Yeah, I would say, it's a lot about resiliency and perseverance, number one, because the road may not be an easy one. And we need to recognize that there's going to be a lot of intentional positioning that you may need to do for yourself. But I think for me, when I look back about how I was able to navigate, it really is about that board of directors that I mentioned during one of the talks with Tiffany. Positioning yourself with 4 or 5 individuals that are going to be those key professional players throughout your career. I think, they can look like us or they can be allies, but it has to be people that, when opportunities come up, they're going to know how to position you to be at the table, right? And it's always about making sure that it's people that have your best interests at heart, people that will provide that critical feedback. Because like I said, there's times in our professional growth that we are going to stumble. And that goes back to the resiliency. You gotta know how to just keep going. So that professional development, that board of directors is key, but also having your goals, knowing where you want to go, having your own professional philosophy, and just making sure that, like for me, I think the biggest strength that people will say is that I hold true to who I am regardless. I hold true to my values regardless. And I think if it's a little bit about just believing in yourself, having others believe in you, and just building yourself around that support system that can help you get through the years where things may not be as easy.
Well, we'll transition to what white folks and non-Black folks, some action items for us. What can we do, non-Black folks do to be better allies or accomplices in the pursuit of racial justice? Big question, but what advice do you have for us?
It is a big question, and I think it's a question that a lot of people are asking right now. And so I think you just did the first thing, ask, like, what can we be doing? And I think continual education, like the more that you can educate and understand, the world that we walk through, the world that we have to navigate. And so it's going to take truly having some conversations with people that can share. And when they share, you have to be willing to listen, right? And not just listen, but try, to understand the depth of what they're articulating to you. Because I think the only way to truly understand, and it's in this scenario, you can't walk, the shoes, because it's just, to have this dark skin is an experience that only we can relate to. But if you can understand and truly want to understand it and make a difference, I think that's it. I think understanding, education, and then just being that ally when you see things that are not right, you gotta have the confidence to speak up, right? I mean, because I think so often, people are looking for us to speak up and for us to be to change, and we can't change it. It's gonna take the majority right now, and Caucasian, the race, you guys are the majority, so it's gonna really, we need for you guys to speak up just as much as we're speaking up right now.
Yeah, well, absolutely. We need to take our fair share of the load, to continue to do some of that work. So Wendy, thank you for sharing your story, and hopefully Region 4 is listening, and we can look to understand your experience and do what we can. Thanks again for your time. Region 4, keep your eyes out for some more conversations as we celebrate our Black colleagues across the region, and we'll tune in next time. Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, everyone.